You have a perfectly good stereo receiver, you connected it to your modern TV, and something just feels off. Maybe the sound is quieter than expected. Maybe you lost surround sound from your streaming apps. Maybe there's a lip sync delay where the audio doesn't quite match what's on screen. Or maybe the volume on your TV remote stopped controlling the receiver and now you're juggling two remotes to watch a simple movie. You didn't buy bad equipment. Your receiver isn't broken. The problem is that modern TVs handle audio completely differently from older televisions. And most people are still connecting and configuring their systems using habits that made sense 10 years ago, but quietly cause problems today. This video is going to walk you through exactly what's going wrong and how to fix it properly. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a like if you want more honest, practical audio content. And drop a comment telling me which stereo receiver you're using and what specific problem you're running into with your TV setup. Let's sort this out. Why modern TVs changed everything? To understand why so many people get this wrong, you need to understand how dramatically TVs have changed in the last decade. Older televisions were straightforward. They had RCA audio outputs on the back, you ran a pair of red and white cables to your receiver, and everything worked exactly as expected. The TV sent an analog stereo signal, the receiver received it, and that was the end of the story. No settings to configure, no formats to worry about, no compatibility issues. Modern TVs are a completely different animal. They're thin, which means their built-in speakers are almost always weak and disappointing. But more importantly, they've become smart hubs that handle streaming, apps, gaming, and multiple HDMI sources all in one box. The way they output audio has gotten more complicated to match all of that functionality. Most modern TVs don't even have analog RCA outputs anymore. Instead, they use HDMI ARC, HDMI eARC, or optical digital outputs, and each of these behaves differently and has different capabilities. If you're still approaching your receiver connection the same way you did with an older TV, you're working with assumptions that no longer apply, and that's where the problems start. The biggest mistake, plugging everything into the TV first. Let's start with the most common, which is using the TV as the central hub for all your devices and then sending audio back to the receiver. This is the natural instinct because modern TVs have 4 or 5 HDMI inputs, and it feels logical to plug your streaming stick, your game console, your Blu-ray player, and everything else into the TV, then run one cable from the TV to the receiver. It's tidy, it's simple, and it almost always causes problems. Here's why. When audio travels through the TV on its way to your receiver, the TV has to process it and reformat it before sending it out. And many TVs, when they detect a connection going out to an audio system, default to outputting stereo PCM rather than passing through the original audio format from your source device. So your Blu-ray player sends a beautiful high-quality audio signal into your TV. And your TV quietly converts it to basic stereo before passing it along to your receiver. Your receiver gets stereo and plays stereo, and you have no idea the original signal was richer than what you're hearing. You just think your system sounds okay rather than great. This is also the reason people often lose surround sound without understanding why. The source material has surround information, but the TV stripped it out before the receiver ever had a chance to see it. The fix for this situation is to stop treating the TV as the hub and start treating the receiver as the hub instead. Connect your source devices directly to the receiver's HDMI inputs, and then run a single HDMI cable from the receiver's HDMI output to the TV. This way, the receiver sees the full, unmodified audio signal from every device, decodes it properly, and sends only the video signal up to the TV for display. The audio never gets filtered or reformatted by the TV because it never passes through the TV on the way to the receiver. Understanding ARC, eARC, and optical, now let's talk about the connections themselves, because this is where a lot of confusion lives. If your stereo receiver is handling TV audio, meaning sound from the TV's built-in apps like Netflix or YouTube, you need a way to get that audio from the TV back down to the receiver. There are 3 main options, and they are not equal. The first is HDMI ARC, which stands for Audio Return Channel. This is a feature built into most modern TVs and many receivers that allows audio to travel backwards through an HDMI cable, from the TV back to the receiver, using the same cable that's already sending video from the receiver to the TV. It's convenient because it reduces cable clutter and it usually allows your TV remote to control the receiver's volume through a protocol called SEC. The limitation of standard ARC is that it can only carry compressed audio formats like Dolby Digital or DTEs, and it has a relatively limited bandwidth. For a stereo receiver, this is usually fine because you're not trying to decode high-resolution surround formats anyway. The second option is HDMI eARC, which is the upgraded version. ARC has much higher bandwidth and can carry lossless audio formats including Dolby True HD and DETS HD Master Audio. If both your TV and your receiver support ARC, this is the best connection to use. But here's an important practical note. For a stereo receiver, the real-world benefit of ARC over ARC is usually about convenience and control reliability rather than dramatically better sound quality. You're still receiving stereo audio at the end of the chain. The bigger advantage of EIARC shows up in home theater setups with surround receivers that can actually decode those high-resolution formats. The third option is optical, which is a digital audio cable that uses light to transmit the signal. Optical is reliable and widely supported, and it's a perfectly good choice for connecting a TV to a stereo receiver. Its main limitation is bandwidth. Optical cannot carry high-resolution lossless audio, and it's limited to 2-channel PCM or compressed surround format. For stereo listening, this limitation doesn't matter at all. If your receiver doesn't have HDMI inputs at all, which is common on older or simpler stereo receivers, optical is a completely appropriate solution. The short practical guide is this. Use HDMI ARC or eARC if both devices support it, because you'll get volume control through one remote and a reliable connection. Use optical if your receiver lacks HDMI connectivity or if ARC is causing issues. And avoid trying to plug an HDMI cable directly into an ARCA input because they are not compatible in any way, which leads us to the next problem. The ARCA and converter problem. A lot of people own older stereo receivers that were built before HDMI existed. These receivers have ARCA inputs, maybe a few component video connections, but no HDMI at all. When they get a new modern TV, they immediately run into a problem because the TV has no analog audio outputs. There's no headphone jack, no ARCA outputs, nothing that connects directly to those red and white cables on the receiver. This mismatch confuses a lot of people, and some of them assume their receiver is simply incompatible with modern equipment. The solution is a digital-to-analog converter, commonly called a DAC. These are small, inexpensive devices that take a digital audio signal, either from optical or HDMI ARC, and convert it into an analog ERCA output that your older receiver can understand. You connect the optical output of your TV to the DAC, and the ERCA outputs of the DAC to the receiver's input. This gives you a clean, functional connection between a modern TV and an older analog receiver without any compatibility issues. The audio quality through a decent DAC is perfectly fine for stereo listening, and you're not losing anything meaningful in the conversion. If you've been assuming your older receiver is useless with a modern TV, a $10 to $30 DAC changes that picture entirely. TV audio settings. The hidden reason things sound wrong, even when the physical connection is correct. The wrong TV settings can silently undermine your audio quality. This is the most overlooked part of the whole setup process. Modern TVs have an audio output menu that controls what format the TV sends to your receiver, and the default settings are often not ideal for your specific situation. The most common setting options you'll see are PCM, auto, bitstream, and pass-through. PCM means the TV converts the audio to standard digital stereo before sending it out. For a stereo receiver, this is actually a perfectly appropriate setting because your receiver is going to play stereo anyway. Bitstream or pass-through means the TV sends the raw audio data from whatever format the source is using, whether that's Dolby Digital, DETS, or something else, and lets the connected device decode it. This is useful for surround receivers, but less relevant for stereo receivers. Auto means the TV tries to detect what the connected device can handle and adjusts accordingly, which sounds convenient, but can sometimes produce inconsistent results depending on the TV brand and firmware version. For a stereo receiver, the safest and most consistent setting is usually PCM, or this tells the TV to output a clean 2-channel digital signal every time, regardless of what the source material is doing. You won't get surround sound through a stereo receiver anyway, so there's no benefit to fighting with the TV's auto detection logic. Set it to PCM, leave it there, and your audio will be consistent and reliable every time. One more setting worth checking is whether your TV has a volume control mode that lets it manage the receiver's volume via HDMI SEC. If you're using ARC or eARC, enable SEC on both the TV and the receiver. This is what allows your TV remote's volume buttons to control the receiver, which is one of the most practical benefits of using ARC instead of optical. The exact name for SEC varies by brand. Samsung calls it AnyNet Plus, LG calls it SimpLink, Sony calls it Bravia Sync, but they all do the same thing. Find it in your TV settings and turn it on. Lip sync issues and how to solve them? If you've ever watched something and the audio seems to arrive a fraction of a second before or after the mouth movements on screen, you're experiencing a lip sync problem. This is surprisingly common when audio goes through an external receiver, and it happens because the TV's video processing takes a certain amount of time while the audio may travel a different path at a different speed. The result is a mismatch that's mildly annoying at best and completely distracting at worst. Most modern AV receivers have an audio delay or lip sync adjustment setting that lets you add a small delay to the audio so it lines up with the video. Most modern TVs also have a similar setting. If you're experiencing lip sync problems, go into your receiver settings first and look for audio delay or lip sync correction. Start by adding a small delay, around 20 to 40 milliseconds, and see if that improves the alignment. If your receiver doesn't have this option, check the TV's audio settings for a similar control. It usually takes only a small adjustment to fix the problem, and once it's set correctly, you never have to think about it again. The right setup for your situation? Let's bring this all together into a clear, practical picture for different types of setups. If your stereo receiver has HDMI inputs, connect all your source devices to the receiver first, then run one HDMI cable from the receiver to the TV's eARC or ARC port. Enable SEC on both devices. This gives you the cleanest signal path, the best audio quality, and one remote volume control. Set your TV's audio output to PCM for simplicity and consistency. If your stereo receiver has no HDMI inputs but has an optical input, connect an optical cable from your TV's optical output to the receiver. Set the TV audio output to PCM. This is a simple, reliable connection that works well for stereo listening from TV apps. You won't have SEC volume control through this path, so you'll need the receiver's remote for volume, but everything else will work cleanly. If your stereo receiver only has analog URCA inputs, use a DAC between the TV's optical output and the receiver's URCA inputs. This gives you a compatible connection without buying new equipment. Closing and final call to action. Here's the takeaway from everything we've covered. Modern TVs change the rules of how audio travels between your devices. And most people are still using setup habits that made sense with older equipment, but cause real problems today. The core principle is simple. Use your receiver as the hub when possible, choose the right connection type for your hardware, set your TV audio output to PCM for stereo receivers, and enable SEC for proper remote control. These are not complicated changes, but they make a genuine difference in how your system sounds and how smoothly it operates every day. Your stereo receiver is not obsolete. It's not incompatible with modern TVs. It just needs to be connected and configured in a way that matches how today's televisions actually work. Make these changes and your setup will immediately feel more reliable, more controlled, and better sounding. If this helped you figure out what was wrong with your setup, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who's dealing with the same frustrations. Drop a comment below telling me what connection method you ended up using and whether it solved the problem. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now because more practical audio and home theater content is coming very soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.